And welcome back to episode 8 of Football Is Groovy with Dev and Matt. Here about to cover match week 19 of the Premier League and related topics. I think it's been quite an interesting couple of weeks now. We obviously had a double game week for a lot of teams, so there's a lot of football in the Premier League being played now. And then of course now FA Cup this weekend, so lots to talk about.
Yeah, some interesting games in the middle of this week. Just a change of who's on top of the table. So you had a bit of like, what do you call it?
Playing musical chairs.
Musical chairs. So you had, originally Leicester went top for a brief period after beating Chelsea 2-0, which is a pretty interesting game. And then you had City winning as well, going top, and then Man U winning as well. So all three teams, it's quite tight at the top.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting couple of days of football. Obviously, with all the leapfrogging going on, it's certainly nice for neutral fans to watch something like that happen. It keeps the Premier League nice and competitive. United obviously sitting top at the moment, but City do have that game in hand, which if they were to win it, would see them go top.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to see that we are halfway through the season now pretty much, and it's still so competitive. Obviously, stark contrast to last season where Liverpool walked away with it and practically won it by now.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's as a neutral, it's a lot better because you never know who's going to be on top at the end of this game week, even this far in. I mean, we're literally halfway through the season. So it's, I mean, at this point, kind of impossible to tell who's going to win the league.
Which is nice.
It's nice. You don't know. But it's not only the top three that at least I think could win it. I think it still extends all the way to Tottenham and Everton. It might not be as realistic, but I don't think they're out of it. I mean, Tottenham's 8 points off of Man U. If
with the game
City,
in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if City wins, then maybe it expands a little bit. But I think with Everton's games in hand as well, you got to look at them and say, well, you don't really know, really.
No,
everything
it's
up
impossible to call based on the way the
teams.
teams have been playing. I mean, you look at Chelsea, for example, they were title contenders and now they're sitting in 9th after a couple of bad games. Tottenham, they were top of the table and now they're struggling in the middle of the top half. So it's interesting. Obviously now, big game coming up next is the Tottenham-Liverpool game, which obviously see either Tottenham then go above Liverpool or Liverpool extend their gap over Tottenham. So that's an important game. Obviously, with Liverpool having recently just had their Anfield Fortress record destroyed by a Ashley Barnes penalty.
Yeah, I mean, obviously now's the perfect time for Tottenham to take the opportunity. And,
100%.
And, I mean, if Liverpool haven't had such a poor run of play, I can't really remember. At probably the end of last season, towards the end, was the last time when they let a few games slip, but not like this. So I think Tottenham have the opportunity.
Yeah.
They should, at least on paper, to me, they'll be the team that wins.
I think it'll also be interesting to see what team Klopp puts out, because obviously now against Burnley, Sadio Mane was the only one of that front three who started. Obviously then Firmino and Salah did come on eventually, but I mean that was even before they conceded, and they still couldn't score. So their goal drought is continuing. So it's certainly there for Tottenham to take.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because we always talk about Liverpool saying that the problem when you face them is that they're always going to outscore you.
Yeah.
So not necessarily that they have a better defense than you. It's that if you want to beat them, you got to put 2 or 3 past them. So obviously, Liverpool not scoring now just makes it a little bit easier because you don't have to worry about them putting 4 past you. But I wouldn't write them off. I mean, they have the caliber. They can very easily win. But yeah, with the run of form, you got to ask, this is the opportunity for Tottenham. Tottenham's defense doesn't look that bad, at least not post 70 minutes and plus.
Yeah.
So, I would imagine this time, if we get that initial goal, I think hopefully Mourinho's learned that lesson from the previous game, that we don't want any last-minute headers from Bobby. So let's please keep this... Please don't let it stop.
No last minute nerves. Can't deal with the heart attack again. But so I think you can't write Liverpool off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Liverpool. There's a reason everyone talks about them the way that they do. But it's impossible to call who's going to win the league at the end of the season.
Yeah,
I think.
No, for sure.
I wouldn't want to be a betting man with this right now. Your odds would be great because no one knows what's going on, but how would you know?
And with all the injuries and everything, I mean, because you would think City is going to win, but then if you look at it, I mean, initially in the beginning of the league, they weren't doing that well without De Bruyne. Now he's injured again, out for 4 to 6 weeks. And obviously, he just hit such good form in that last game against Crystal Palace.
That cross from him with the outside half of his boot was magical.
So he's obviously a great addition to the squad and
100%.
contributes so much to them. Maybe not statistically, but just winning. They need a guy like him.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see with the rest of the players hitting form. I mean, they've got Gundogan who's on form, Foden's on form, Joao Cancelo, and the back pairing of Stones and Diaz is...
That's certainly working for
them. The team is playing well as a whole.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they function without De Bruyne in the mid.
Well, because there's also no Aguero because he tested positive for COVID the other day.
But has he been playing that much?
No, he hasn't. But I mean, even if he's not playing, you want him on your bench.
Fair.
He's a seasoned goal scorer.
But even Ferran Torres hasn't been getting that much game time. So they still have him. They still have Jesus. So it's they've got. I think they still have enough players to carry them through the next run of games.
Yeah,
but I think
a doubt.
A team that's got to be worried now is Liverpool because I don't know if you've seen their next upcoming 8 games. It is tough.
And a lot of those games are away games. Yeah. So it's going to be tough. They play Tottenham, City. Obviously, they play United in the FA Cup tonight.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a tough couple of weeks for a Liverpool fan right now.
Coming up.
Speaking of FA Cup, obviously now moving on to the most recent matches that have been played, kind of no real upsets yet, except for Southampton knocking out Arsenal, beating them 1-0 with an own goal.
Yeah.
First time that they've beaten Arsenal in the FA Cup. Also, obviously knocking out the reigning champions at the moment. So they can no longer defend their title. So obviously that'll certainly for Tottenham fans will be happy. It's an opportunity for Spurs now, and obviously all the other clubs as well. And we're going to lose Liverpool or Manchester United, guaranteed. So that's another big club out. So then it's certainly opening up on that front as well in the cup.
For sure. I mean, I don't think Southampton were necessarily the better team. I don't know. I mean, the goal was just...
But they kept Arsenal out. Obviously, this is an Arsenal side with Willian in it at the moment who's not doing anything.
Exactly. So it's Arsenal right now.
It's tough. But when you look at the run of form that Arsenal have been on, obviously now that Arteta's putting a lot of faith in his youngsters. So you've seen the likes of Smith Rowe now getting a lot of game time, and he's kind of been dictating the midfield.
Yeah.
Obviously, being the youngster, he's probably not going to be that consistent because simply he doesn't have that experience. And obviously now they've just sold Ozil. They've let him finally go. He's now at Fenerbahce.
Yes.
So,
and good for him.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, just as I think any decent football fan will look at that and go, good riddance, because a player of that quality that just sits on the bench and is getting paid what he's getting paid for a reason. I mean, honestly...
No, it's a waste. You want to see someone like that on the pitch.
I just don't understand how a player of that quality cannot be used.
Yeah.
Like that's the question. I mean, we might not ever get the answer to it because it's like... I understand, if a mediocre or just kind of average player, historically or just recently, is not being picked. I get it because, Aubameyang, good player, not being picked, but he's not scoring.
Yeah.
Sure, Ozil had some, periods of time where he wasn't assisting, but historically, like that you can get the best out of him. You know what he's capable of.
Especially
confusing
when you consider the position that Arsenal's in. Yes. Surely you would want, even if he makes a small improvement, he's a player could play that number 10 role and be the creative spark in the midfield as opposed to trying to find someone else to do it.
Yeah, well, and now they've just signed. It's still kind of in the works, but if it does go through with Odegaard coming on loan to Arsenal, that's another player who I would imagine would like to play in the 10 position. It's then you've got Smith Rowe already there. Odegaard comes in. How does this fit in for Arsenal's structure? And will Odegaard just sit on the bench as well? Like, how is that going to work? I mean, I don't know if you could say Odegaard's the same caliber as Ozil, but I'm just saying like it's going to be interesting.
Well, it's the same thing with Ceballos.
Yeah.
Because he plays somewhere between a number 10 and a number 8. But he's certainly got the creative ability to be a number 10. But even he hasn't done well really since he's joined Arsenal. So it's going to be interesting to see if Ødegaard does in fact go to Arsenal, what kind of role he's going to have. Obviously, coming from Real Madrid / all the other clubs that he's been loaned out to, he's getting more game experience now. And at Real Sociedad, he was kind of starting to actually show his potential.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
So
that's why he was pulled back. That's why he went back. So.
And obviously, this is by far the biggest challenge for him now, coming to a big club in the Premier League.
Oh, for sure.
In the Premier League.
Yeah.
So, this obviously isn't now Serie A or the Dutch league or anything like that he's now playing in. So it's going to be a real test of his character and his capabilities, and to see what he can actually do.
That's why I don't think he's going to start as often as you would imagine. I just don't see it. He's a new player that hasn't played consistently in any kind of club to really, like a full season of consistent game time. I just don't see how Arteta would play him. And yet he has the caliber of Ceballos, and he had Ozil, and he had all these players. Why would he pick someone that's completely new?
It's going to be interesting to see, how he fits into that. Also, the formation, I guess, plays a big part in that as well. If you're playing a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, where does he fit in with those different roles? Because I'm pretty certain that he won't play out on the wing.
No.
Pretty certain about that. So then it's either in the number 10 role, the number 8, or the number 6 role.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, they have options. So it's just it's interesting. But yeah, now they're out of the FA Cup, and Southampton will obviously they'll be stoked. After beating Liverpool, now beating Arsenal, the confidence is probably going to be great results for them. So so I've got a couple questions for being a Tottenham fan. Obviously, we've talked about Gareth Bale a couple times now. Just as a wing option and a new addition to the squad. And I think it's worth mentioning now that there was a little bit of news broke about what Mourinho was saying to Bale on whether it was at training, I believe it was at training. And he basically just said that, do you want to go back to Madrid and play no football? And I think the question is now starting to arise was Gareth Bale a bad transfer? Was it the wrong move to bring him to Tottenham?
Look, I think if you want to go based purely on numbers, you'd have to say yes.
Yeah.
Because obviously he hasn't. Obviously, a lot of Tottenham fans are comparing him to the Gareth Bale that left Tottenham those years ago.
Yeah, no, of course.
And to expect him to deliver the same results, because he had a lot of injuries in the last couple of seasons as well.
Yeah.
So he's probably himself either doesn't have the confidence, or simply cannot, because of his injuries, to give that Gareth Bale that we know back to Tottenham. But I think if you're considering the actual situation behind what was going on at Madrid, him not playing and things being sour, I think if you consider, take a risk on a player like that, bring him back to an environment that he knows, that he's been there before, with fans who love him, give him that, try and see if you can give him that confidence. Because yes, it hasn't quite worked out as Spurs fans and probably the Spurs club itself would have liked. But at the same time, you see this guy smiling and laughing, and it looks like he's enjoying football again when he is on the pitch. Who knows? Obviously, the loan is only for 1 year, but if he goes back to Madrid, there's the option to extend it, in which case that will be the end of his Real Madrid contract.
Yeah.
So Tottenham could then sign him on a free if they wanted to. So maybe they take the risk and say, finish your career here with us, but you'll be a veteran player and you won't play every single game, because obviously you've got Lucas Moura, you've got Steven Bergwijn now, the younger guys who can do the job better than what Bale can do.
Yeah.
So I think as a whole, I'd say no, it hasn't been a bad move for him.
For him, yeah.
For him, yeah.
For
obviously Tottenham would have wanted the goals and the assists and all of that, but have they really been missing out on it? I don't think so. Kane and Son have been doing well. Bergwijn, when he's played, has been doing well. Tottenham are starting to win. They're finding form again. So are they missing in terms of what they would have hoped? Yeah, but is it affecting their result? I don't think so, no.
Okay, I get you. So basically saying that it's not really impacted the club, that if he wasn't there, it either also wouldn't have made a difference. I guess, yeah, bringing him on loan is obviously the big part of it, is that because he's on loan, it's not going to be as expensive as if they had just outright bought him from Madrid. That would have been a complete waste.
Oh, yes. So maybe then I'd be saying a different thing now. But for me, the concern is, and obviously him and Vinicius do play in different positions. So Vinicius is just more likely to have more chances at goal playing as a striker. But I probably would have liked to have seen Bale doing a bit more in the FA Cup and Carabao Cup matches and the Europa League matches, simply because of the nature of the opponents that Tottenham are playing against there. It would have been nice if Bale could have been scoring 1 or 2 goals or assisting or whatever in each of those matches. But the fact that he's then not necessarily struggling, just not having that impact in those smaller matches is probably what concerns me more than his Premier League performances. Interesting stat that I saw the other day about Bale was that I think in the last 12 months or whatever it may be, he started 2 league games, 1 at Madrid, 1 at Tottenham. I might be wrong with the time duration, but certainly 1 league game at Real and 1 league game at Tottenham. Jeez. So he's obviously not in starting 11 kind of form, which is obvious. I agree with that. It's just a very interesting stat for someone who was at one point the world's most expensive player, one of the Premier League's golden boys. So certainly a fall from fame, I guess.
Yeah, and obviously I think a part of that is just his attitude. I don't think there's a debate as to whether he has, at least at Madrid, he did not have a good attitude. I mean, I know a lot of the Real Madrid players defended him, but if you're looking at it objectively, someone who spends 7 years in Spain and doesn't learn English that's weird. That's strange to not learn the language of the country that you're living in and have been there that long. That's weird. Just the integration with the squad. I know Spaniards can be difficult. No, I'm kidding. But
is that the bias, the Portuguese bias coming in?
Just No, I mean, in some way, it's kind of strange that he didn't integrate at all into the squad. It's very rarely that you hear that happen. Like a lot of times, the guys get along, and but he had such a fallout with Zidane as well, and there was the whole thing of golf Wales Madrid. That's a serious thing. Like we joke about it, but if you're getting paid what you get paid at Madrid, and you see that on someone's Instagram bio, what are you gonna think?
No, you're gonna be upset with them.
No ways, dude. Yeah. Like you're either here to play for real. For real.
Excuse the pun.
Or you out. So I think I think the conversation Mourinho was having with Bale was along that line, not a line of injury and
I agree with that.
Lack of performance. I think it was along those lines.
No, I agree. Also, if you consider the stature of Tottenham compared to Madrid, obviously Real Madrid is the Galacticos. They are the super club. Yeah. Where Tottenham are obviously a bigger club now than what they were when they sold Bale, but they're not up and Madrid, right. Despite the fact that we did beat them in the Champions League. But if you look then at the terms of Bale obviously being in his early 30s now, he's an older player. Yeah. Is he more likely, based purely on that fact, to play for a Tottenham side who could use the experience of him, or to play for a Real Madrid side who is now starting to actually kind of rebuild their team?
Yeah.
So from that side, and then of course there's the whole fallout thing which impacts it as well. So I agree with that. I think it's about logically thinking, where will you get the chance for more game time, and it's at Tottenham.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'd have him just for the sake of having a winner in the team.
100%.
Same as like with Joe Hart.
Yes. No, that's kind of the same logic on both of those.
Yeah.
Bring in experience. Just bring it in.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's nothing to lose. At least it's not the biggest financial risk. So
no, exactly.
I understand it from that point of view. But if you're looking at it, I guess that's what Jose does. He brings players in that I don't think he's known as the coach who builds a club from scratch. I think
he completes the club. He brings in that one missing piece or two missing pieces that the club needs.
What he did at Chelsea, what he did at Real Madrid is what he's doing here. So
I agree. And Tottenham have that chance to win silverware in the Carabao Cup playing against City.
The best they've looked to win any kind of silverware in the last couple of years.
Yeah. But just on the note of world-class players, obviously FIFA released their Team of the Year. and there was a notable exclusion
Yes.
on there in that right wing position, filled by another person I want to talk to you about later. But obviously, no Leo Messi in this year's Team of the Year. I don't know what your opinions are on it, but I think it's almost warranted. I think he hasn't had the best season. Obviously, all the nonsense that went on during the transfer window with Barcelona not letting him leave and all of that would have had some kind of an impact on it. So do I think that he delivered performances well enough to certainly get ahead of Mbappe in that team selection? No, I don't think so. And I think, everyone's saying, but it's Leo Messi. I'm like, at the end of the day, he's just a football player.
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to hate me for saying that he's just a football player, but if he's not playing well, his name should not be good enough to get him into a Team of the Year.
100%.
It's about the performances that he does
in the last season.
Precisely.
You're looking at that period of time. Yeah.
Because I'm just as shocked that he's not there. But then when you think about it, no, he hasn't played well. You consider Cristiano Ronaldo, who a lot of people have argued he hasn't been the same since he went to Juventus compared to the Ronaldo that was at Real Madrid. But Ronaldo has still been more consistent and he's putting better performances in than what Messi is.
At least relatively in the league that they've been performing in. So I mean, you can't dispute. I mean, Ronaldo was one of the top scorers in the Serie A.
Yeah.
This season he's top of the charts as well. So no, you can't debate whether or not he's played well in that league. Sure, Messi's stats weren't. I mean, so are we saying he was literally replaced by Mbappe? Is that kind of...
Well, that was the swap.
That right wing. Position-wise, yeah.
In position-wise, yes.
So, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think... Because Messi was still one of the runner-ups for the Ballon d'Or. So that makes it difficult to argue why he wasn't included.
Look, I guess you could make the argument now, because obviously the front three was Ronaldo, Lewandowski, Mbappe. So I guess you could potentially make the argument that because Lewandowski's been doing so well, that's crowded out Mbappe from maybe going into that kind of like number 9 striker kind of role where Lewandowski is, which then obviously crowds out Messi now. Because you're trying to get those two guys in there who've both had good seasons. Obviously you can't not have Lewandowski in there.
No, you can't. No. Lewandowski's the first first choice there.
Precisely.
That's it.
So I guess you could argue that by the simple fact that both Lewandowski and Mbappe have had better seasons, or a better last season than what Messi has had, warrants his exclusion.
But that's the thing. Did Mbappe have a better season than Messi? Did he actually statistically? I don't know his stats off by heart, so I'm not sure how many goals. I'm sure he got a lot, but just based on the Ballon d'Or decision, the fact that Messi was chosen as one of the 3 best players in the world, I don't understand then how Messi, if Mbappe's stats were better, he would have been there. He would have been in the top 3. So I don't know why he. I'm just saying I don't know if Messi is better than Mbappe or vice versa. They're both good players.
Look, I guess the best way is to have them both in the same team. But but
obviously Mbappe is really good. I don't know. To me, I think it might have been a bit early. I think personally, Messi still had a good season. If I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of the season, he did have. It was either a little bit of an injury or he had something that was out for a couple of weeks. Obviously, with all the drama at Barca, that had an influence. But no excuses. Excuses aside, that's irrelevant. I would personally put Messi in my team ahead of Mbappe at this point.
Look, I think I'd... If we were just picking a team, I think I would as well, simply because of the fact that it's Messi. And you know what he can do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No. Look, it's still interesting. It's interesting that it's the end. This is the beginning of the end. It's the first time it's ever happened. It's going to keep happening now. So, I mean, it's unfortunate.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, you talk about beginning of the end. So then you start looking to the other side, the beginning of the beginning, in Mbappe's case. Because he's obviously been doing quite well at PSG now, and for France as well. And now he's stated that he doesn't really want to sign a new contract extension at PSG because he doesn't know where his future lies. And he doesn't want to commit to PSG, and then a year from now he says, well, I have an offer from another club, let me go there. And it's interesting considering now that they've got Pochettino there, who's just joined. So you start wondering, does that have an influence or not? But now, and this was a question that I posed on TikTok yesterday, was where do you think Mbappe would go if he left PSG?
Well, immediately just by his prestige and just by his name, if he's not, it depends now. Like he still has 1 year left.
Yeah.
Right. So at this point, no one's going to buy him. That's not happening. So it's obviously everyone's going to wait until the end of the season, and then everyone will flood. So everyone will have the opportunity to try and get a hold of him, and then he'll have his pick of whoever's interested. But I could probably see the likes of Bayern Munich. I could see Barcelona. 100% Barcelona will be looking, especially with Koeman's agenda to revitalize the squad with a young set of players. So that makes sense for Barcelona. But if I would think that Mbappe basically was saying he wants to play with Ronaldo. I think.
So you think he'd go to Juventus? That would certainly be an interesting lineup.
I think it's possible. It's because he'll be on a free. It's open to everyone, so everyone will try and take their pick. But the more interesting question is why he doesn't want to stay at PSG. I think that's the thing I'm curious about, because you've got obviously new manager, so it's going to be a little bit of, that he's going to bring in his own players, so there's going to be change. It's not like if it was Tuchel, it's basically going to be the same squad.
So you're saying that Mbappe is worried that Pochettino is going to replace him with Dele Alli?
I mean, it could be anything that he's worried about with Poch. I don't know if it's that, but maybe he just doesn't have confidence in PSG being a Champions League winning team and maybe the best team for his future. Maybe he wants to get out of La Ligue or Liga and move on to more challenging.
That was going to be my suggestion. Does he want to go and prove himself in England or in Spain or in Germany?
Very much could be.
Because I could see him at Real Madrid. I think if I remember correctly, he's spoken about his dream is to play for Madrid.
Yeah.
So that for me just by default would be an option. But I could see him at Liverpool. I think he would fit their system very well.
That's interesting. I mean,
do I think Liverpool would go after him? I know all the Liverpool fans would want him to, and they've obviously had the speculation of Mbappe moving to them. But do I think Liverpool would go for him? Obviously, a couple of months ago, Salah, there's all of that going on with Salah, but Salah wanting to leave Liverpool. So I guess that would be your perfect replacement almost for Salah, is to bring him Mbappe. But I could see Barcelona happening, being that rebuild.
But what you're saying with Real Madrid also makes sense, especially with Zidane, more French, Benzema at the top there as well. Benzema's getting old, and anyone would take Mbappe over Benzema. No, he's playing well, but it still is quite interesting that he's saying this at PSG, because PSG is it's a reputable team. I mean, obviously
the Champions League final last year.
So I think it'll be interesting to see where he goes, and obviously great addition to any squad. So definitely keeping an eye on that.
Yeah.
So something else that's pretty interesting is basically UEFA has been organising this. A lot of clubs have been in talks about the Super League.
Yeah.
And then FIFA issued an ultimatum to players, not to clubs, but to players, that if they play in the Super League, they will be banned from the FIFA World Cup. And so we've talked, I think, a little bit about the Super League and the idea of it, and I think we're both against the idea of a Super League, which I would like to think that all decent football fans,
genuine
football fans will be against the idea of the Super League. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that ultimatum and the future of this sort of FIFA and UEFA.
Look, it's tough, because obviously FIFA being the governing body for international football, and then I guess football as a whole, they do kind of have that power to do that. But do they have the power to kind of ban a player from representing their country? That for me is a bit maybe extending that power too far.
It's the only thing they can do, though. They have no way to prevent UEFA from
That's the thing now. Obviously, this is kind of being pushed by like private sides.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If you want to form your own private competition, then what's really stopping you from doing that? If you have the money to do it, then why not? Obviously, FIFA, having put this notice out, are strongly against the idea of a Super Cup because they obviously know what it will do.
Yeah.
Is it fair to kind of put that kind of a repercussion on a player? Because obviously now, let's say a player who plays for, let's call it Manchester City, he doesn't want to play in the Super League, but he wants to play for Manchester City. That means he'd now have to leave Manchester City if he wants to then obviously play for his national team and for Man City. So that obviously puts a lot of pressure on those kinds of players. And then what happens if the majority of the players want to still represent their country and then they decide to leave those clubs to go to other clubs? Then that defeats the purpose of the Super League entirely because those players are no longer there.
Well, yeah, that's why ultimately it'll come down to pressure on the club because the players will be saying, listen, I'm not playing in a Super League. If that's what you want to do, then transfer me. Cancel contract by mutual consent or something like. The worrying thing is that this idea has gotten a lot of steam. The idea of a Super League has been pushed to the point where clubs were in negotiations with each other to actually arrange this happening. So what I'm concerned about is that UEFA falls under FIFA in the European Union and area of football. But what's to stop that confederation or spin-off confederation of just interested individuals to say, okay, well, we'll hold our own World Cup? Because the only issue is that players can't play in the FIFA World Cup, but maybe there'll be another World Cup that gets created by this organization, and then that will allow players in the Super League to play in their own version of the World Cup. So that's the thing, is that you can't prevent them from creating their own organization.
No, you can't.
Obviously, FIFA has the network effect that the brand size of FIFA is.
Well, obviously, you by default, you're going to want to play in the FIFA World Cup, not the...
Purely based on the name.
No. Yeah.
There's exactly that. But that's why that's the only thing that I could see happening, is that these organizations create a spin-off. I don't know if it would be successful, just purely based on the size of FIFA. FIFA's such a monopoly on football. I mean, it's so huge. But yeah, I mean, then I think ultimately that would become a problem as well, because you don't want to have players playing in two separate World Cup competitions. Now you've got to start having conversations of, this was the best club in this competition, this was the best club, and then you're going to have cross competition. No, I mean, just keep it in how it is right now. It works, and it's honestly just about money.
Look. One of the other aspects that needs to be considered, as well as obviously now, if this league goes ahead, then you need to consider like broadcasting rights and all of that.
Yeah, it'll be
because there's obviously a lot of money in terms of that, and then in terms of actually broadcasting and televising the games to people around the world. How would that work? Because obviously, like for us, we've got SuperSport, who will then broadcast the Premier League matches. Would SuperSport then be willing to buy the license to broadcast the Super League matches? So then do we miss out? Obviously, then you start considering like Sky Sports or BBC or Fox or whatever it may be.
Well, that's the problem, is that this league will undoubtedly draw attention. If I've got a competition between the top 8 teams in the world, you can't tell me that's not appealing. But it is absolutely appealing.
But then you need to consider the longevity of that. How long will this competition stay novel? Because
sure.
Champions League, obviously now Champions League is kind of...
Yeah, it's changing that format.
It is like that now, where you see the best club in England play the best club in Spain.
Yeah.
And everyone gets excited that there's a hype around because it's novel. You don't see this on a regular basis. Not to mention that you then have the draw, so it's completely randomized. Whereas now, if you get a league where it's literally week in, week out of Manchester City playing Bayern Munich, Liverpool playing Real Madrid, and that's how it goes every week, how long before that just gets, it's just another match? Because if you think about it in the Premier League, where you have these matches on a regular basis, do you get more excited to watch Man United play Liverpool, or do you get more excited to watch Liverpool play Real Madrid? So when it starts becoming something normal, obviously, yes, you get excited for the big matches in the Premier League, but you get more excited for something that you don't see on a regular basis.
Yes.
So you need to consider the how far down the line will this competition be able to keep people interested. Because for me personally, I'm going to get very bored of watching those teams play against each other after 3-4 years.
Yeah, you will.
Because at the same time, they are the level that they play on, you're probably not going to see 3-4 kind of scorelines. You're going to see the 1-0s, the 0-0s, just because of how good they are. So,
yeah, no, there is that. But yeah, what you're saying about the broadcasters is that unfortunately all the broadcasters will eat that up. They will buy those rights.
No, of course.
Every single broadcaster will buy those rights the moment it comes out. So it's billions that we're talking about as an industry, which is why FIFA is so afraid of this. So yeah.